Don. I'll see you in a minute. I swear, the Golden Driller broke into a slight smile as Mom and Dad drove my sister and me into the Tulsa State Fairgrounds. Linda and I love the state fair. And now I may be romanticizing about the days bygone, but I think Mom and Dad dropped us off and said, we'll be back in a couple, 3 hours, and came to pick us up. But even if they were supervising or chaperoning, they fell into the background of the rides. Oh, the roller coaster and the merry-go-round and the tilt-a-whirl. And not the Ferris wheel. I do not do Ferris wheels. We love the games, throwing the rings on the Coke bottles or shooting the little ducks that are going across on the shooting game. I hit one of those ducks squarely, and the little thing didn't fall over. I wonder what that's all about. And of course, we made the obligatory tour of the animal exhibits. But I think the thing that we loved the most was the House of Mirrors. You go into the House of Mirrors, and they have hallways with mirrors, and it forms a maze, and it's really kind of hard to get out of there. And then there is the convoluted mirror, the one that distorts reality. I was a fat boy when I was in grade school, and that mirror made me look skinny as a string bean. Linda was a pretty girl, and that convoluted mirror made her look like an old witch. That mirror distorted reality. What we hear is that the chief priests and the elders of the people found out that debating Jesus, arguing with him, interviewing him, was like looking into that funhouse mirror. Jesus had just come into Jerusalem the day before on the back of a donkey. It's the day that we celebrate as Palm Sunday. You remember the crowds were adoring him. They were laying down a blanket of palms in front of the little donkey. And as soon as Jesus got into the town, the first thing he did was to go to the temple and not quite ingratiate himself with the temple authorities by turning over the money changers' tables. Then he went out and spent the night at his friends Martha and Mary's house in Bethany, and came back the next day and came into the temple. Now, after that spectacle of the day before, the temple authorities were not really up for coddling this country rabbi. But they know how popular he had been, and they saw this motley band of disciples that may have looked like a first-century gang. And so they said, well, we're going to have to be a little careful with him. I think the only thing we can do is to try to trick him by arguing with him. He's just a peasant rabbi, and we are the authorities of the temple. We're the learned men of the temple, the religious men. The women sat on the sides of the temple, and they knew their place. So they tried to engage Jesus in discussion. And they found that interviewing Jesus, debating him, arguing him, was like looking into that funhouse mirror. They said, what gives you the right to do these things? And by that they mean the teachings that you have and the healings that you have, but especially coming in and creating a ruckus in the temple. And Jesus said, look at this mirror. And so the chief priests and the elders of the people, the chief priests represented the religious authorities of the day, and the elders of the people represented the civil authority of the day. And they were both conspiring against Jesus. Everybody was against him. So Jesus holds up his hair and said, look, here's who I base my authority on. Well, they're sure when they look in there, in that mirror, that they're going to see someone like themselves. A learned person, a scholarly person, someone who has earned their temple bona fides by studying the law and obeying the law. And were they shocked when they looked in there and they said, that's John the Baptist. Well, he's just a marginalized peasant. He's a loner. He's a loser. He stayed out in the desert. He can't give you any authority. And indeed, John the Baptist had just died because he had challenged the real authority of Galilee at the time, Herod, who was the ruler of Galilee. But John the Baptist was representing the kingdom of heaven. You see, John the Baptist didn't say the right things. He did the right things. True righteousness is a matter of doing, not just saying. You know, before you and I point a finger at those scribes and at the chief elders and the chief priests of the temple, we must and point out that they didn't accept that Jesus' authority came from heaven. We need to remember that when you point at someone, you have three fingers pointing back at you. So when we look in the mirror, would we be shocked to see someone, the image of ourselves, who gets upset with other people, who doesn't like the way the furniture in the church is arranged, literally or figuratively, who is causing a ruckus and a commotion? No, you see, true righteousness is a matter of doing, not just saying. Pointing the finger at others. One of the interesting questions that we have, that I think is a fascinating question, is when I get to heaven, who will be standing there next to me? Well, let's look in the mirror. Yes, there's you. And my goodness, there's the tax collector. And there's a prostitute. And there's someone else who has repented and turned and accepted the authority of Jesus. Just as Jesus said, the tax collectors and prostitutes will get to heaven before the goody-goody people in the temple. Because true righteousness depends on what we do and not just what we say.